Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dragonfly Heart Medicine podcast. This is episode 32, and I am really looking forward to the conversation today. Our guest is someone that I have the pleasure and privilege of knowing as a pretty amazing healer in my community here in North Carolina. And we talked a little bit before we hit the record button, and the topics I think are going to be really useful and beneficial to anyone who's listening who is either interested in Reiki or has Reiki training. Um, so I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves and just give us a little bit of information about you and why you felt the call to agree to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen, for inviting me here. My name is Michael Ward. I am a Reiki master teacher in the sort of Triad area all over. I own Kinetic Roots Wellness, which is a queer-owned and trauma-informed massage therapy practice in High Point, North Carolina. We're located inside the Carolina Core Wellness building, so kind of right near the Palladium there in High Point. And I have been studying Reiki since 2007. So I've actually been studying since I was 15 and have had the privilege to study with multiple masters and sit with a lot of different meditation teachers as well. And so I've been able to blend those two together to really just create a beautiful practice for myself. And I really wanted to come on here and share about the Gokai or the Reiki Precepts because I feel like there's not enough education around them in most westernized Reiki practice. And I feel like the richness of Reiki really comes from sitting in meditation with the Gokai.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize you had been practicing and learning for that long. But that's amazing. And I think it's pretty cool that you were able to just learn from lots of different people in the Reiki field and kind of integrate all these different experiences into the unique version of Reiki that you bring to the table and that you teach your students. And so, for anybody listening who has no idea what you're talking about when you talk about the precepts or Gokai, could you please explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Gokai or Reiki Precepts, also called the Reiki Ideals, are the guiding principles of Reiki training that were set forth by the founder of Reiki, Mikao Usui. And they're really there to help the practitioner calm their mind, promote emotional stability within themselves, and to align with the universal life force energy that we channel when we practice Reiki. And for those who don't know, I'll gladly speak the words out loud of what the Gokai is. So this is a direct translation of the Gokai. So the secret art of inviting happiness, the miraculous medicine of all diseases. Just for today, do not anger. Do not worry and be filled with gratitude. Devote yourself to your work and be kind to people. Every morning and evening, join your hands in prayer. Pray these words with your heart and chant these words with your mouth. Usui treatment for the improvement of body and mind. The founder, Usui Mikao. Yeah. And I don't know about for you, Kristen, but for me, being taught the Gokai was it wasn't focused on, like I said before. And it wasn't really until I deepened my meditation practice that I even began to understand what the concept really meant or the importance level of them.
Hmm. Yeah, because I remember in my training, there was a lot of focus on here are the things, here's the Reiki stuff, here's the precepts, here's the hand positions, but make it your own. Use your intuition. Let that guide you. And although that was helpful in with me developing my own Reiki practice and learning to trust my intuition and know that however I was practicing Reiki was right and there wasn't really a wrong way to do it. But the precepts were kind of just like glazed over, like here they are. And I remember in my training, we sat in meditation and like we repeated one of them like at a time and just kind of had there was like a pause for us to just kind of see how they felt in our bodies. But that was really all there was. And to be honest, when I went forward in my Reiki practice and started doing Reiki on myself, I mean, I think the precepts would come up every now and then into like my mind's eye, but it wasn't something that I really focused on. And so with you starting to, at least in your own practice, putting these into more of like a focal point during your meditation or during your Reiki practice, like how did that impact you?
Yeah. Man, I had such a similar experience to you, first of all, where it was taught and it was mentioned, and we even, sat in meditation and we did a touch situation where we touched each one of our fingers to connect each one of the precepts to like a finger touch. That way we could feel it. So it was mentioned and we practiced it a little bit, but it wasn't deepened. And as you said, for me, it really was just sitting down and feeling out each one of the precepts, working with them sometimes for a week or more at a time, um, to try to really understand, what they mean and what they are. And in truth, it wasn't until I started forming this 21-day meditation course, which is actually over the last year or two, that I've been kind of working on this course, that I began to truly find a real clarity in what the Gokai meditation and contemplation could be.
Mm,
Um, and when you really look at it, if you break it down and just start with the first part of it, because the Gokai can be what I read a minute ago, but it can also be seen as the just for today mantras. So another way that people often say them are just for today, do not anger. Just for today, do not worry. Just for today, be grateful. Just for today, be diligent or honest with your work. And just for today, be kind to all living things. So when you break that down and you break it down to the just for today section, I think that's one of the big pieces in the Gokai that's often missed,
mm,
is it means so much more than just for today. It can mean for this day, for this minute, for this hour, or it can even mean just for now, meaning that we're committing to these precepts not for a lifetime, not even for a long time, but that we are just committing to them for the next 5 minutes, for just this one moment, making it a lot more attainable and a lot more real than the idea of committing for a lifetime of
mm.
no anger, no worry. Because I don't know about you, but I get angry and worried every other day, even with, over 15 years of practice.
Absolutely. We're still human. And so we still have our moments where we let anger or frustration or whatever kind of overpower us for a moment. But I think, as always, it's just being aware that that's happening and just doing our best not to react in those situations or make important decisions or say things we're going to regret in those moments. And I remember because when I I mean, honestly, most of my adult life. So around 18 is when things started to kind of manifest, is I started having really bad issues with anxiety. Depression came a little bit later. And even now, there'll be some days or some weeks where I'm finding myself being really anxious. And the precept that kind of helped me kind of calm that part of my mind that felt like it always had to figure out like what was like it just felt like it always needed to figure out what was wrong,
Mm.
like this, like in the, like what's wrong, why am I feeling this way, and being so caught up in the mind that I couldn't listen to my body to see what it needed. Maybe I was just dehydrated, or maybe I didn't get enough sleep, right? But that, like, that phrase, just for today, like I will not worry, it's like my mind
Mm.
can be like, oh, just for today I can do that, like I can do that. Tomorrow I'm going to worry all I want, but like just for today, like I think I can do that. And then tomorrow comes, but it's really today, right? So just stay, I guess it helped me kind of stay in the present moment and give my mind a little bit of peace. Like I don't have to, like you said, I don't have to commit to this for the rest of my life, but just for today, I'm going to do my best to release worry or not to worry. And
Mhm.
so that one I think is the one that stands out the most to me. Is there one in particular that stands out to you? I know you already kind of mentioned the one about anger. Is there another one that feels like it speaks to you more than the others, or are they all just serve their purpose at different times?
You know, I definitely agree with you how that can make it attainable. And for me, anger is a big one that definitely stands out. You know, I come from a family that has a lot of anger issues, that has a lot of impulse control issues. And at a young age, I decided I didn't want to be that person. You
Mm,
know, I didn't want to be the person that was screaming and throwing things and, having those outbursts. And I can tell you, even to this day, there's still a struggle with that anger piece. Um, and really working with the precept, understanding what anger is, understanding that sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's right to be angry, really helped me. In the same way that for you saying, just for today, I can handle not worrying today, this one day. Um, and same worked for me. I can handle not being angry for this one day. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to be mad about it. Something that happened yesterday, something that happened before, maybe it'll come back up. But just for today, I'm not going to be angry. And another thing that you mentioned there, and you kind of passed over it, and I loved it. It was when you said maybe tomorrow, but then that'll be today. I love that moment because it's noting the fact that there is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday, there is only today. Everything happens in the present moment. Yes, we can reflect and have memories of yesterday, and yes, we can look forward and have hopes for tomorrow, but our only thing that we actually experience is in the now, is in the today.
mm. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, yeah. I'd also like to go ahead and look at the precepts um, from the other side. So we have the just for today, and we kind of understand how that breaks down to being just for now. But looking at the actions themselves, sometimes people are wondering, what is this? How do I actually explore or work with these? So the actions themselves are: do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be diligent or honest with your work, depending on your interpretation of that one, and be kind to living things. So in exploring these precepts, I really encourage people to sit silently with each term and really try to define it in all of its different aspects. You can look at the literal definition, you can look at the antithesis or opposite meanings. You can even look at like how it shows up in your life to truly define it for yourself. And this is what, when we talk about, it helping with my anger, this is exactly how it helps. And I feel like this is probably how it helps with your anxiety as well. So the way that I would break it down, and I have two examples here for anger, I would say, and these are my own associations as well. So anger is defined as a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. The opposite emotion of anger would be joy or happiness.
Mm.
In my life, anger arises when I'm triggered, when I don't eat enough. I'm a real hangry person.
Me
uh,
too.
and when I'm driving, and especially lately, driving has become almost a contact sport in its own right. I mean, driving has gone crazy for the amount of stress it brings me. Um, And then I look at, okay, so I've got my definition, I've got my things. Now, how does it come alive for me, or what can I do with that? So I process anger by taking time away from that stimulant of anger. So if
Mm.
I'm driving, maybe I find a safe place to pull over and stop for a second. Or maybe I get where I'm going and I sit there for just a second, and then I'm able to breathe and ground and kind of allow it to leave my body, right? And I worked the same thing up for the principle of diligence or honesty. So again, for me, diligence is defined as a careful and persistent work or effort. This is similar to the Buddhist concept of right effort, which is something I really strive to put into my practice. And I'm motivated to be diligent by feeling pride in my work or by having the overall outcome of that, sort of the final project there. And I know that I'm challenged in diligence by a lack of motivation or by distractions in my life. So you can see how, as you break this down, versus it just looking at it as just for today, do not anger, or just for today, be diligent. That's a great claim, but what does that actually mean to me? And so by breaking it down, it gives us something to actually work with and work on to move forward. Um, so I'm curious if you have one that you're able to break down in a similar way that speaks to you.
Yeah, so the whole car thing just made me laugh because I used to never like be a road rage person. But where I live now, it's like people just are not paying attention. Nobody ever goes the speed limit. It's like way over or way under, you know. And sometimes I'm just like, ah. But I think when you mentioned just taking those pauses, and I like how you mentioned you didn't really say like you take a pause and you're trying to get rid of the anger, but you're trying to let the anger like move through you. And I think that that's a really important piece because we're not saying anger is horrible. You should never, like, if you're angry, you're just a terrible person, or, you're not spiritual enough because you're angry. A lot of these emotions do arise for reasons, and our at least a part of us feels justified in whatever that is, but not like entertaining it as much, just pausing, letting it move through you, taking a few deep breaths, and then kind of recentering yourself and going from there has really helped me as well, even with like anxiety. So, what usually happens, like I said, my mind just goes into overdrive and it's like, why am I anxious? What is going on? Is it something in my environment? Is it something that I ate? Did I forget to take a certain supplement? Did I did it? It's just like going crazy. But just pausing and focusing on my breath and holding kind of the opposite of what I feel like is anxiety, which is like peace or calm for me. And knowing that that may look different at different times, depending on what is coming up. But usually, when I just pause and breathe, and I usually put like one hand on my heart, one hand on my abdomen, and just take a few deep breaths, and just allow the anxiety to be there without judgment, without trying to figure out why it's there or how to make it go away. And usually for like a minute or two, the anxiety increases because I'm allowing it to be present. And it feels like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a heart attack. This is like, I need to get away. But if I just keep allowing, it usually goes away within a few minutes versus lasting all day because I'm resisting like feeling it. Um, and so for me, like just allowing emotions or feelings has really helped me, um, and once again, the gist for the today, I'm doing my best to focus on peace when I can, and but not beating myself up or feeling unworthy of peace or anything like that, just because I am in a state that other than peace. Um, and so and realizing once again that like I used to be that person, if this then that, if this
Mm-hmm.
happens then I'll be at peace, if I just get a new job, if I just have more money, if I have a better relationship, if I have new clothes, if whatever it may be, then I'll be at peace. But realizing that peace is in the now, peace is
Mm-hmm.
here, and it is accessible to me now, even if I am feeling anxious, even if I am feeling angry. If I just pause and allow things to move through me, I can get back to that joy, that happiness, and that peace. Those are just kind of so similar experience to you, I feel like. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love the piece on allowing that, allowing the emotion to be there rather than fighting against it. Because fighting against it is a form of clinging. You're clinging to the positive and you're fighting for that positive rather than the negative or seemingly negative emotion that you may be feeling in that moment. And that clinging only is going to cause you more suffering because you're like, man, I wish I was happier. Man, I wish I was happier. And you're still going to be in this form of anxiety or this form of aggravation at not being happier. So you have to allow that emotion to be what it is because it's true, it's real, and it's a part of your current experience. And I love that you brought that up and mentioned that. Um, it actually leads directly into the next point that I wanted to mention, which is the RAIN method of meditation that was created by Michelle McDonald. And it's often used in mindfulness meditation circles. I've had several of my teachers use it, and I know that Tara Brock uses it often in her
Mhm.
teachings, and often in her teachings. So for those that don't know, the RAIN method of meditation, it is actually an acronym. So RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and the N originally stood for non-attachment, and now it has transitioned into nurture. A lot of meditation teachers felt nurture was a better terminology for what this last step actually is. Um, so with RAIN, you let's say you have anger here. You're going to recognize when you're feeling that anger.
Mhm.
You're going to allow it to be there because, like I said, it's real and it is your present experience. And then you're going to investigate, why am I angry? Where does that anger live in my body? So, just like you were saying with the anxiety, why am I anxious? Why am I anxious? It's just a piece. It's not the main focus of the whole thing, but just a piece of it. Why am I anxious? Just for a moment, try to figure that out. Um, and then nurture it. But nurturing doesn't mean giving it what it wants. It doesn't mean giving into it, worrying a whole bunch more, or let's say you're worried about taking this trip and so you just don't take the trip. That's not nurturing yourself. that's giving into that emotion. Instead, give it what it needs to move through and out. So, like you said, taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to ground, taking a little bit of space that you may need before moving further. And so the RAIN method can really help you see the core terms of the Gokai, these anger, this worry, this lack of kindness, this lack of diligence, this lack of gratitude as it happens in your day-to-day life. And I want people to remember, this isn't something that you do just sitting in front of your altar, just sitting in formal
Mm,
meditation. This is something that you do day in, day out, throughout your day. It's what really makes it a practice and a lifestyle more than just something that you do.
mm. Yes, I love that piece there at the end. In the beginning of my Reiki journey, my spiritual journey, whatever, both, I guess. I would do these things in meditation. Like I would be in meditation and I would go through the precepts, or I would be like, okay, yesterday I was anxious. Let's unpack that. How can I like not be anxious? Let me be calm. Let me do yoga. Let me do this. But it was always like it only happened when I was on my mat, when I was doing yoga or when I was at my altar meditating. And no changes were really happening in my life. And I was frustrated because I'm like, I'm doing all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't becoming like a lifestyle. It was just something I did at certain times of the day. And it helped initially, but really just taking those techniques and like you said, applying them, like, when you're driving and, pull over and do whatever you need to do, breathe, whatever, and making it a part of your everyday life. And I feel like for me, a lot of it was dissociation, like in being
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from my body and not even knowing if what I was feeling or what I was experiencing because I was so disconnected. I just knew it felt bad, you know. And I also I just lost my train of thought. Let's see if I can get it back or it may just go away. But yeah, I think it was just going back to the anxiety and noticing for me too, like and asking why am I anxious? And then a lot of times I'm a background, like we have like what, like a certain amount of thoughts that are happening like simultaneously, right? Only some of
Mm-hmm.
them are getting our attention and a lot of them are subconscious. And so the deeper I got into my meditation and my like somatic practice, like feeling these things in my body, I would realize a lot of times that anxiety is connected to a thought that's like running in the background of my mind that doesn't have my awareness, but is still creating that anxiety. I've noticed that a lot lately, like with this bout of anxiety I've had for a few weeks. Part of it's due to some medication changes, but part of it is due to unprocessed grief. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like in the background, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really miss so and so. I wish so and so was in my life. Why did so and so leave me? Why did this relationship end? Or, I lost my dad a few years ago and I haven't really processed a lot. So it's like, where's my dad? What's going on? Things like that. And when I sit in meditation and allow the anxiety to be present, a lot of these thoughts start to come forward. And then it's like, oh, well, no wonder I'm anxious. Like this thought, is going on. Or I had thyroid cancer when I was 13. And so sometimes that anxiety is if I have lab results that are slightly off or I just feel slightly off, there's this part of me that's just like worrying in the background, like, oh, it's cancer, cancer's back, it's got to be cancer. And that's creating anxiety. And it's just interesting that I wasn't even aware that I was having these thoughts until slowed down to kind of investigate and get curious about the anxiety. And that's, I think, what helps me the most is remaining curious and just kind of like almost like it's someone else that I'm talking to and not getting so attached to the things that are coming forward, but like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more, talking to that inner child or whatever part of me. Um, But yeah, like you said, it all starts with awareness. And it's not, so we call it a practice too, a yoga practice, a Reiki practice, a meditation practice, because it doesn't have to be perfect and it's not going to be perfect. But I think they're really great tools to have and to help us process life as being human, because being human's hard sometimes.
Being human is hard almost all the time. You know, my meditation teachers often bring up the fact that, you know, as far as we know at least, we are the only species on this planet that is aware of our own awareness, which is
Mm.
why being human sucks. Um, it's that whole idea that we are aware of our own suffering, we're aware of our own emotions, we're aware of everything, and we're not just acting on instinct,
Mhm.
which really sets us aside. Um, Also, I had no idea that you went through such medical hardship at such a young age, and that clearly shows, you know, in your healing path and who you've become of this like wanting to nurture and care for
Mhm.
other people, which I think is really beautiful. I really do.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
one of the thing that I picked up from what you were saying too is the idea between formal and informal practice. You know, in meditation, that's what it's called. Formal practice is when you're seated in your meditation posture, in your, you know, yoga class, in your whatever, that would be your formal practice. And then that informal practice is the everyday life, is the mindfulness as you walk down the street, is the couple of stretches that you do right before you teach a class because you know your back's a little sore or something like that. It's those moments. And you know, for most of my life, I've struggled to have that formal practice.
Mhm.
You know, I'm neurodivergent, ADHD. Uh, you know, I have this not willingness to sit down every single day at the same time for the same amount of time, just rigidly. And I tried so hard because, you know, so many of my teachers said, that's how you do it. You sit
Mhm.
down, you create this daily practice. And that just didn't work for me. And when I figured out that your informal practice can be just as rich, that really woke up inside of me, everything. You know, I go about my day now and I just look up every once in a while. Wow, really mindful and really grateful for the sky. Or,
Mhm.
you know, oh, wow, this one flower, this one petal on this one
Mhm.
flower. Wow. And those moments are where I actually find the joy of my practice and the truth of my practice.
Mhm.
It's the informal moments. You know, the formal moments help. That's what gives you your focus. That's what builds your resilience. But
Mhm.
those informal moments, I think that's the sweetness. I think that's the flavor of your practice, you know?
Yeah, I
And
would.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, I agree.
And then one other thing that I picked up on that you said that I love, and we didn't talk about this when we chatted before this interview, was that you said be curious. And it's funny, I write this into almost every one of my meditation scripts when I'm teaching.
Mhm.
I always say, be curious with your investigation. Um, because that's exactly what it is. Have a curiosity. It's your own mind, it's your own emotions, it's your own life. Be curious with it. You know, if you're curious enough to go out and search out that newest piece of technology, if you're curious enough to search out that newest television show that's out, and believe me, I
Mhm.
love watching TV and movies. Um, be curious about yourself. Be curious about your life and your mind because there's such, again, a sweetness, a flavor in there that is part of who you are. And you don't know that until you're curious.
Yeah. And for me, I tend to be super serious all the time. Like every decision's life and death. If I make a mistake, like it's over, and I'm getting a lot more compassionate with myself and, you know, whatnot. But I think when I think about being curious, there's this like lightness and playfulness to it versus like over analyzing or being a drill sergeant with myself. Because children are curious, right? They're like, they
Mm-hmm.
look at a leaf and they're like, what's this? And there's a bug on the leaf, and oh, I've never seen that before. What's that? And why is the sky blue and why is the grass green? And just that curiousness and just of be and that just complete awe and wonder about the world. And I feel like in doing this work and showing up and living out all the things that we're talking about, like the things that Michael and I are talking about, these are things that we do. It's not just things that we are talking about and we've never tried for ourselves. These are things that we do in our lives. And I feel like since I have started to be more curious and more playful, like I do feel more childlike and like like just have these moments where I'm like, "Oh, I'm so grateful that I'm here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful for this fresh air and the way the sun feels on my skin or whatever it may be." And I think gratitude too is just such a practice in and of itself, really, to learn to be grateful. And I feel like when you practice being grateful for the little things like that, and it brings more, like whatever you're focusing on brings more of that. And so I am a part of this intenders group, intender circle, and there's actually like some kind of foundation or organization called oh gosh, intenders of the highest good or something like that. And they have a website and some really cheesy videos, but essentially we come in a circle every other week, and we share all of our gratitudes, and then we also share our intentions, and everything is in the now. So I am meditating every day. I intend I am implementing a yoga practice. I intend I am um, making $200 extra a month, whatever it may be. And I think that that's just another piece for me as being grateful and like that, but that like genuine gratitude, not just making a list of 10 things to be grateful for just to do it, but you know.
Yeah, I have those same moments of that genuine gratitude. In fact, I had one yesterday. We're temporarily living on our in-laws' farm, and I was walking down to the barn area, and I looked out and I saw all of the cows grazing, and I saw these two calves chasing each other around and kind of like headbutting each other and playing around and then running away. And I just had a moment of like, I live here. Like this is amazing. Wait, I live here. I don't stare at these cows enough. Just watching them play and just have fun, and just this immense joy just came up. And it was a briefest of moments. And if I didn't take that moment to be curious and allow that feeling, I wouldn't have noticed it. I would have just kept walking. But I noticed it, and I stopped and I stared at them, and it was just such a beautiful and such a rich, rich moment. And you're right, the more you see those moments, the more you will see those moments. Um, and just noticing that gratitude and focusing on it. And then you also mentioned the intentions, and I've never really been a major person for setting intentions. I've done a little goal setting and that type of stuff, but not really majorly into setting intentions. Well, fast forward to me being with my partner and getting the chance to teach him Reiki, and all of a sudden he's using Reiki to set intentions
Mhm.
left and right, and man, they are really, really working. And I was blown away. I'm like, over 15 years of Reiki practice, and I hadn't used it in that way. And he's like, watch this after 2 years. I mean, just blown away by the intention setting that you can do using Reiki and using this, universal healing energy. Um, really just blown away by that.
Mm, yeah, I mean, the power of intention really is strong. And then you combine it with something like Reiki. And, so when I teach Reiki, I tell my students there's the possibilities are endless. You can do Reiki on yourself, you can do Reiki on people, but you can like do Reiki on your water, you can do Reiki on your food, you can do Reiki in your living space, Reiki on your or in your car, like Reiki with intentions. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like you just do it and similar to like meditation. You don't just do it in the treatment room. Like Reiki is kind of like it's a thing, it's energy, it's flowing, it's around us all the time. It's not just something we turn on and then we do the Reiki and then we like turn it off. Maybe in the beginning it shows up like that, but over time it just really becomes just another part of who we are and how we show up and how we interact in the world, I feel like.
For sure, for sure. And I know it's definitely alive in my life. And yeah, I don't turn it on and off. It turns itself on and off.
Mhm.
I often will be doing a massage. I'm a massage therapist by trade. I may have mentioned that in the beginning. Um, I'll be doing a massage and all of a sudden it'll turn on and it'll be going. And I'm like, well, they didn't want Reiki necessarily, but here it is. It decided they needed this healing. And then it's up to them and their higher needs if
Mhm.
they choose to accept it or not. Which is one thing that I absolutely love about Reiki is that it is completely guided by that sort of higher consciousness, um, which is a wonderful thing. It means that it
Mhm.
can do no wrong and it can do no harm because it is only for pure good, which is really wonderful. Um, so I know we've been talking kind of all over the board, and I wanted to bring it back.
Mhm.
We could do this all day long, I'm sure.
Right.
um, I wanted to bring it back to the Gokai, um, to remind everybody, before I get into this next little bit, to remind everybody what the Gokai is again. So, again, this is just for today, do not anger. Just for today, do not worry. Just for today, be grateful. Just for today, be diligent or honest with your work. And just for today, be kind to all living things. So for people who are having trouble diving into those emotions, like we were talking about, you and I are used to this. We're used to being around these community groups, these circles, being
Mhm.
open and sharing what we feel. My partner often talks about how he doesn't know how I do it because he has the opposite reaction. In a group situation, he wants to close down. And I'm like, I'm wide open. Let's tell you all about my terrible things, my horrible
Mhm.
feelings, whatever. Um, but for people who can't access in that same way, a great way to engage with the precepts is through parables and stories. And actually, for that 21-day course that I'm working on still continuously, I've written with the help of an AI, which is a lot of fun. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
tried playing around with AIs, but I had an AI help me write parables for each one of the different precepts. Now, the parable that I'm going to share a little bit later is not one that I created, but one that I found when I taught a Gokai retreat about 3 years ago, I believe, 2 years ago. Um, but the ones that I created are accessible through that 21-day course, which hopefully will be on my website as soon as I wrap up finishing all the pieces to it. Um, but again, when people are struggling, they can use these parables or stories. Parables and stories are often used by meditation teachers when teaching things like loving kindness meditation, because you often want to get yourself into the headspace of a certain emotion or feeling before you work with it.
Mhm.
So the story that I brought today is really on the precept of do not worry. And so the opposite of worry is peace, as you said earlier, peace or calm. And the story is called A Portrait of Peace. So once there was a king who offered a prize to an artist who could best depict peace. Many artists brought their depictions and brought their masterpieces before him. But among the artists of the various masterpieces was a picture of a calm lake. And there was a peacefully towering snow-capped mountain with a blue sky and fluffy white clouds overhead. The picture was absolutely exemplary. And most people who viewed that painting thought that that was absolutely the best among all the others. But the king had a different winner in mind. To the crowd's surprise, the king chose the picture of a mountain, but the mountain was more plain and more rugged than the other piece. The sky was shaded and looked angry because there was lightning and storm clouds. It was, in fact, the exact opposite of what they all thought peace should look like. They thought maybe the artist had submitted the wrong painting, or maybe that they thought it should be a storm rather than a picture of peace. But what they didn't notice was that if you looked closely at the painting, there was a tiny bush growing in the crack of the rock. And in that bush, there was a little nest built by a mother bird. And in the midst of all of that stormy weather, the bird was just peacefully sitting there, focused on her nest.
Mm.
So you can see how in that specific portrait, it was depicted that in the presence of all of that turmoil, there is still one who can be calm in her heart. And this story really represents the essence of peace and being without worry. After all, we don't find peace in the perfect and serene conditions, but rather we find it in the middle of that storm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the Portrait of Peace, we see that mama bird resting on her nest, unaffected by the storm around her. No matter what worry arised, from fear, the peace was able to emerge not from the external circumstances, not from what was around her, but what she had cultivated inside of herself in that moment.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I think there's multiple scriptures that talk about this in the Bible, but the one where there's like this huge storm and the disciples are on the boat and they're all freaking out because it's storming and they're, like, oh my gosh, what if the boat, floods, if it tip over, we're gonna die. Oh my goodness, they're just like freaking out. And Jesus is just sleeping like a baby. He's just sleeping and they wake him up and they're like, it's storming, aren't you afraid? And he's just like, no, I'm not.
Why would I be? Really, why would I be afraid? What is there to be afraid of? I have meditation teachers say this to me all the time, and now it's become a part of my personal practice. When I'm out in the world and I have that fear, that worry arise, I often just say, well, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I could die. I'll be dead then. It won't matter to me anymore. It's not, or you think about, oh, okay, I could get into a car accident. I could do this thing. And you start thinking about all of these different worries. For some people, don't go that way. That'll get you more anxiety and more worry. But for others, and especially for me, it almost makes it comical. It makes it something to go, well, I guess if that happens, it happens. Like, I'll be out of luck then, And I really think that that's the key to some of these things is making them comical, making it something you can laugh at. The practice of laughter yoga, I don't know if you've ever done this.
Mm-hmm.
It, there's a lot of joking around in laughter yoga. There's a lot of fun in it. But it can also be really sour. You can go into laughter yoga to work on some really deep, hard emotions and, pointing at yourself and laughing at yourself, holding the part of your body that you don't find beautiful and laughing at that part of your body. And it can bring up these emotions in the way that you can then push them out of the body, not push them, allow them to flow out of the body, because you can just go, oh, it's just funny. Like, just laugh at it. And I want to look back and reflect a little bit on that story that we just went over. And I encourage the listeners to maybe go back, re-listen to that bit of the story, to the Portrait of Peace, and use these reflection questions that I have here to try to dive into this a little bit more for themselves, maybe working on that precept just for today, do not worry. So the first is reflect on turmoil. Think of a time in life where you felt chaotic or uncertain. What storms were present, and how did you react to those storms? Were there moments of calm amongst the storm? Reflect on what helped you or what could have helped you find peace during that time. The second question, reflect on inner peace in the present moment. So you see the mother bird found peace by focusing on her nest despite the storm. So take a moment to consider your nest. What is your nest? What is that part of your life or that part of your heart that feels steady and nurturing? How can you anchor yourself in that sense of security when that worry or fear or anger arises? And third, reflect on transforming worry into peace. So worry often stems from imagining what might go wrong, like we were just talking about. What are you currently worried about right now? Write down the worst case scenarios of what you fear, and then reflect on how focusing on the present moment and trusting your ability to handle the changes and challenges that might transform that worry into peace. And so, as I said, one way for me to do that is laughing at it. I laugh at those worries. I laugh at those fears. Don't always laugh at my anger. I'll admit that. But ideally, I'd love to laugh at my anger afterwards and be like, wow, I was angry and that was silly. So by reflecting on stories like this, we can really bring our minds into alignment with the precept. Are there any type of reflection tools that you like to use?
Journaling I think is great. It just, I don't know, something about just putting pen to paper and writing it out. And sometimes I don't always do well with prompts, so I usually just do like brain dumps. I'm just like, okay, I'm anxious or I'm worried or whatever, or I just did this meditation and I'm feeling some type of way and I'm not really sure what's going on. I'll just start writing things down or drawing pictures or just whatever is like needs to come out just comes out. And a lot of times it's a combination of like words and pictures and sometimes poetry shows up in there. But yeah, I think that those really journaling can be a really powerful practice. I don't do it as much as I used to. And that's kind of something that I notice when I'm not journaling as much. I do tend to have more anxiety because I'm not giving attention to those pieces and parts of me that are dealing with X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I love that story. It's simple, but it really kind of gets the point across. And I notice for me as well, the more I've worked on being grounded and present and in my body, the easier it is to not get as overwhelmed with these emotions. It doesn't feel like they consume me because I'm
Mm-hmm.
grounded and I'm like embodied, like my thoughts and beliefs, like I'm embodying those things. And so it just helps things be a little less overwhelming. But yeah, journaling definitely helps me a lot through all those things. And when in doubt, I love to just move my body, whether it's dancing or yoga or going for a walk. I talk out loud a lot. That helps me process things. So I'll go on a walk at the river and I'll just start talking to myself like I'm talking to a friend or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I do that a lot too. If I'm not in a place where I can like physically write and journal, I'll just start talking about whatever and see what comes forward. And it's always interesting what the mind, once you get past that initial anger or anxiety or whatever's there, it's interesting what comes up after that and how much deeper you can go with it. But that we're kind of laughing about things too. So I've noticed for me, my biggest fear is dying alone. And so most of my worries have
Mm.
to end with dying alone. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm in a relationship and, I message my partner, hey, see you tonight, are we hanging out tonight or, X time? And I don't hear back from them in like a time frame that I think is appropriate. Then the mind's like, oh, well, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe they don't like me anymore. Maybe they're too busy for me. Maybe they don't want to hang out tonight. And if they don't want to hang out tonight, maybe they're not going to want to hang out tomorrow. And then if they're not going to want to hang out tomorrow or the next day, maybe it's really done. It's over and we're going to break up and I'm going to be alone and then I'm going to die. Just like it just goes. And then, but once I get to that, almost always it's like, and I'm going to die alone. And I'm like, oh, well, would that really be so bad? Like, I'm going to be dead. Am I really going to care if I'm alone or not? Or if,
Mm-hmm.
or, all these other things like, that might go through my head. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, and then sometimes I just kind of laugh about it. Oh yeah, there's that fear again, or whatever. And there it is.
And one of the other fun things to think about is that we all technically die alone. We might have all of our friends and family by our bedside. We might have nobody by our bedside, but truly, we die alone unless, I guess, we have somebody who dies at the exact same time in the next
Right.
bed over. But the actual act of dying and releasing is a solitary thing, um, which may or may not be comforting to somebody. Um, to me that would bring up a lot of fear as well. That
Mhm.
idea of dying alone, and I think that that's something we share. I also know that we share that they didn't text me back. Oh my gosh, are they are they okay? My brain, instead of going the way yours does, mine goes into the, oh my gosh, that person's dead. That
Yeah.
person's driven off the side of the road.
Mhm.
I've got to make sure they're okay. Which is funny because I almost think it's a generational fear passed down by my mother because she has the same
Mhm.
reaction when she
Mhm.
can't get a hold of one of us.
Right. But yeah, I think this has been such a great conversation. And I know we started with Reiki precepts and we kind of went over this way and over that way and then back to them and just, things just come up, I think, as we talk about these things and as we discuss these things. And as we start to kind of come towards the end of the podcast, are there any bits and pieces of things that you felt like you wanted to share, but you haven't had a chance to? And yeah.
Um, I really just have, a couple of closing statements, and I also wanted to share how people can find me and find my work, if now's an appropriate
Mhm.
time for
Yeah,
that as
please do.
well.
Hmm.
Um, so I definitely want to share that, whether you are using this silent contemplation of the Gokai or the Reiki precepts, whether you're using the rain method of meditation or you're using those inspirational parables, the Gokai is really accessible to everybody. And without a doubt, it's going to deepen your practice when you start working with it. It's going to help you calm your mind and emotions, and it's going to bring you into alignment with the life force energy, just like Usui wanted us, to follow it for that reason. And one of the juiciest nuggets from Takata Sensei's teachings that I tell my students all the time, and that again is a deep part of my practice that's really alive for me, is let Reiki teach you. There has been so many times in my Reiki practice that I thought, man, I came up with this new thing. Nobody else has done this before. Or one specific one is, I used to call it the 3 H's: head, heart, hara, healing those 3 centers. Well, come to find out, that's the 3 diamonds. That's the 3 dantian. That's the 3 energy centers of the body in traditional practice. And it's something that I thought I came up with, that I was guided in practice to do, because it's not something I was taught. And then I find out, no, it's an established practice since the time of Usui, which is just so rich to have that confirmation. And then to share with you guys, where to find me. So again, I am Kinetic Roots Wellness. We're a queer-owned trauma-informed massage therapy practice. We also offer Reiki healing treatments in the Triad area. You'll see us out at a lot of wellness fairs, but you can find us at the Carolina Core Wellness Building in High Point. It's right near the Palladium there. And then some upcoming classes that I have. So we have just started doing our monthly sound bath again, called the Resonant Hour. And we used to do this once a month, and we'd have the same healers, the same practitioners there every time. Well, the person that we had before moved to the Raleigh area, and now it opened us the space where we have guest healers. So it's myself and my partner. My partner is playing the instruments for the sound bath. I'm doing some guided meditation and Reiki healing throughout the night. And then our guest healer is joining me in doing that healing. And it was so beautiful last month with our first one. And we really got to watch this new guest healer experience. It was great. I loved it so, so much. And then I also wanted to speak on the upcoming Reiki classes that I have. So I have a Reiki 1 class in January. It's going to be January 11th. And this is our half off, kickoff class. So it's only $100. I am also certified to give massage therapy CEs. So anybody that is a massage therapist that comes to it, there are 6 CE credits available for that class. And then I have Reiki 2 in February, which will be on the 8th. And both of those classes, have a brand new student manual that I've been revamping, revitalizing, adding more meditations to, adding new information. And especially in the Reiki 2, I'm adding a bunch of information about trauma and emotions, because it's become a core focus of my work. And I want other people to understand what trauma is and how it's alive in the body. And lastly, for events, I wanted to mention that next year in April, which I'm super, super excited about, we are doing the first ever Triad Reiki Conference. So we are bringing together Reiki practitioners, teachers, and artists as vendors. And then we're also going to have speakers throughout the day. So I know Marie Anderson Whitehurst, a really amazing healer in the local community, and crystal healer, is going to be offering a talk on Reiki and crystals. Not quite sure exactly how she's going to wrap that together, but she's so amazing. I just know she's going to do a great job. We're going to have Melissa Bell talking about small business ownership.
Mm.
And I actually just had somebody reach out to me who may be talking about Reiki within volunteering at hospitals. He volunteers with a cancer center in the Chapel Hill area. And I was just before this meeting texting with him, trying to set up a meeting to talk about maybe him talking at the conference. So if that comes out, I will love
Mm.
that. That would be so great. So again, that conference is the Triad Reiki Conference, and it's going to be April 26th. It is an all-day event, and they can find out more on our social media or on our website. On socials, they can find us at Kinetic Roots Wellness on Instagram and Facebook. And then our website is kineticrootswellness.com. That's KineticRootsWellness.com. And I'd also like to leave you with a precept that I wrote for my students and that I often tell to them, which is just for today, be present.
Mm. Yeah. Presence is just so powerful, for real. Like I was saying earlier, not most of my life not being in my body. And now, like as an adult, feeling what that feels like and being present, it's like night and day. But thank you so much for being on the podcast, for sharing all your wisdom and little nuggets of information. Thank you for sharing all of your events. They sound amazing. I know I'm going to try to make it to the next sound bath in January, and then hopefully I'll be able to be a part of the Reiki conference as well. And for anybody listening, if you didn't catch any of that information, it is going to be, if you're watching on YouTube, it is going to be in the description. Everything that he mentioned links to everything, so you can sign up for his classes, follow on social media, or whatever you want to do. If you are listening, they will be linked on the website as well. So thank you so much, Michael. It has been a pleasure. Thank you to anybody watching or listening. I hope that this was helpful, that some things resonated, and that maybe you even feel inspired to learn Reiki or deepen your Reiki practice if you're already a practitioner.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much, Kristen.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
all the viewers.